established.
All right, we are live. ITRBoxing weekend recap, the wrap up. Nibs, you and I have been around boxing for a long time, right? And I've seen a lot of shit in this sport. There's very few things I've seen in boxing as strange as Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, a guy who started as a YouTube content creator, a Disney Channel kid, coming into the sport against a 58-year-old man now. So many different things to go over on this one, but I guess the first thing that I think is the most obvious is that it wasn't much of a fight, right? And that's kind of what we've been saying, that it always had the potential to kind of be a stinker, that Jake would keep his distance, that Mike would ultimately not be able to cut the range off, and that's kind of what happened. Mike didn't really have any legs anymore, right? Not surprising. He's a 58-year-old man. And Jake never really put his foot on the gas. He just did just enough to land clean shots and kind of win the rounds. The thing that I'm finding the most difficult is that it feels like he gets grace that other fighters don't get. Like he's getting this beginner's grace that a fighter might get in the first year or two of their boxing career, but now he's on year 6 and he's taken on a guy who's almost 60 years old. And there's still that thought of like, well, dude, everyone fights, overmatch fights on their come up and this and that. But I'm watching it and I'm really more than ever, I'm wondering, where's this going? Where's this going? What's the end game?
So to just talk about that, right? Yeah, I think people have to understand we're having two totally different conversations when we're talking about Jake Paul, right? There's Jake Paul, the spectacle, the YouTuber, right? His job as a YouTuber sensation is to sell units, is to get people to watch, right? At the end of the day, that's just and like it, love it, hate it. That's what he's done in the boxing, right? He's not fighting guys that are going to advance his boxing career. He's fighting guys we're going to watch him fight, right? His job is box office, and he's doing that. So when it comes to that, Jake Paul's a fucking genius. I can't deny it, right? All you people who wanted to go watch him beat up on some 60-year-old grandpa, albeit Iron Mike fucking Tyson. Look, Mike Tyson hasn't been Mike Tyson in 20 years. 25 if we being real, right? Even in his last fight, he told us, I can't keep doing this shit. So what makes and the last time he looked decent was against another old ass man in Roy Jones Jr. Let's cut it out, right? This fight did nothing for the sport of boxing other than get people to watch it, right? But it did nothing for his boxing career. This isn't going to help Jake Paul in any way. What did he learn? You know what I mean?
Well, it doesn't help him athletically, right? But that 40 mil never hurts. That 40 mil never hurts on the other side. But I think that's always kind of like, when we as boxing guys, we as fans, we as commentators, however you want to refer to us, we're coming to a Jake Paul fight the same way we would come to any other fight, right? Because that's what we do. So we're going to give him the same kind of criticism, the same kind of critique that we would another pro. And now, especially because he makes himself the main event of a card filled with meaningful, actually interesting matchups, his fight is quite literally the only one that doesn't move the needle athletically at all. It's almost completely meaningless. It's theater. And
right,
I guess to continue countering, it's the same argument about him that it's always been. Is this good or bad for boxing? To me, I think it's a net negative. There's good things and there's bad things. I think the net negative comes where on two levels, and I'm sure you'll add to this as well. But the first level is that, like I've been saying, this fan base doesn't transfer. This is not going to be an audience that now takes interest in Usyk and Fury, or takes interest in Benavidez versus Morel. It's not an audience that's interested in the sport as a whole. It's an audience that's interested in a spectacle that's adjacent to the sport. And in that sense, it doesn't help boxing. I think the other way that it doesn't help boxing is, I'm sure you had this experience too, right? We're the boxing guys. So people that don't really follow the sport, but know we're the boxing guys, they hit us up to get context about what they're watching.
Right.
And the thing that I got asked more than anything else about this fight is, can you explain to me how fights get fixed? Like, who's calling who? Does the promoters call this guy and that guy, and they say, "Oh, we'll carry a mic and this and that." So it if anything, because the fight was so goofy and like deliberate looking, it feeds into the old stereotype that all the fights are fixed. And we know that for the most part, that's not really true. They're fixed before the fight in the sense that the gloves are bigger. They're doing the 2-minute round so that Mike's doesn't gas out. That Jake wouldn't have taken the fight if he wasn't 100% sure that he was going to win easy and walk out squeaky clean. That's where it's fixed. But I think that for people that don't know boxing and they think of old school, when the mob ran boxing, they're going, how does this, how do they, can you explain to me, can you break down for me how fights get fixed? And to me, when you start getting into that, that's like the first thing people want to know. It doesn't make our sport look legit. It makes it look like a fucking fugazi. You know what I mean?
Because
I love my guy Jesus M, bro. He's too much, bro.
So
don't worry, we're gonna get into Zurdo. We're gonna get into Zurdo, Jesus M. Don't worry. We're just catching that. We're getting this out of the way up top.
Yeah. Just to play devil's advocate, because we're both on the same page on this. But what I want to say is this, and it kind of goes back to my first point. Jake Paul is great for boxing, and he's bad for his own career. So what I mean by that is, when you saw this event, right, that place was packed from the first fight on. Usually, you show up to a boxing card, and people are showing up as the big fights are showing up, right? They're showing up when they know the main card is about to pop off. You can watch a boxing card, and in the first two fights, the place is damn near empty, right? Other than the boxing guys, right? Or the people who paid so much for their damn tickets said, fuck it, I'm getting my money's worth. Jake Paul fills seats the entire card. So even the people who aren't boxing guys were there watching all of those fights. So even if 10 of those people who were there leave being now boxing people or interested in, future fights, that's a win for boxing, right? Because even if we only gain a handful of fans, real fans, out of these bullshit events, it's still a win for us, right? And when I say us, the true boxing fans of the sport, in the sport itself. But as far as his career and his fights, they're bullshit. Like but it's people who don't know boxing are now looking at that and going, well, yeah, that's how you make it. That's how you get this. And no, that's not. That's him being part promoter, part spectacle, part really wanting to be a boxer, right? So he's wearing a whole bunch of different hats, and people have to look at it that way. Just take it for what it is and enjoy it. I'll say this. I didn't watch the fight. I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to look at whenever the highlights start to come up on ESPN. I cut them off. I'm damn near ready to give up. Looking up anything Mike Tyson, because this is the first thing that pops up. But I will say this: I'm proud of my guy. My guy came in 58 years old, got a $20 million check. So I'm looking at the positives. But yeah, Jake Paul as a fighter does nothing for me. Jake Paul as a promoter, look, he gave us another great fight. We're talking about him and Tyson. Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor had another fucking fantastic ass fight, right? The fight, with Barrios and Abe. I mean, great fucking fight. But people are showing up for him.
I
but
think
we got some great fights
that's
because of
kind of
it.
where I always default to, right? Is like, you're right. There were some really great fights on this undercard, and we're gonna get to them and talk about them the same way we would any other boxing match. But I think that the issue is when I scroll the internet or I hear what people are talking about casually when it comes to this card, what they're left with is that fight was goofy. They're not left with, man, Abel Ramos, really did something kind of historic, had his little Cinderella man moment in an all-time classic, and we got to be there for it. That's not the takeaway. The takeaway isn't that Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano is maybe the greatest rivalry in women's boxing history. That's not the takeaway. The takeaway is that you got. You got. You thought that you were in for a real fight, and what you saw was an old man who didn't have any legs left try to survive. And the other part of it too is he admitted online after the fight that he almost died in the buildup to this, and he had to have multiple blood transfusions. So now there comes into question, look, you could go, hey, good for Mike. That takes a lot of heart and this and that. But people pay money for these things. There's investors that put money into these events. And so when you're advertising it like the past of the history of boxing versus the future of boxing, and you make it like it's this Titans collide moment, and really what it is it's a business transaction, I think that's where you lose me, bro.
I think this is, if I'll just put it this way, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? and again, I'm gonna give Mike. I'm trying to stay positive, Dakota. Don't. I'm trying. Look. Mike got his 20 million. Jake got his 40 million. I'm never gonna be mad at anybody for getting their bag. The beautiful thing I will say about this is right. This wasn't some $100 pay-per-view. This was Netflix.
Agreed. I will give them credit on that for sure.
And I know there were some glitchy issues, but come on, folks, this was Netflix's first live event, right? For all things considered, they did a pretty damn good job. I was actually impressed with the overall production. They had a great commentating team, everything. Again, they had some glitches, but again, this was their first time doing that. They'll figure that out. They're Netflix, right? They've got the money to figure that part out. I'm actually excited to see what they do going forward. Like, do they stay in this sport, right? Because I actually liked this event better than I did the one on Amazon, as far as the overall production of it. So I think that to me made this palatable, right? Because nobody had to shell out $100 to watch this. It's part of their Netflix subscription, right? We were just talking about this the last time we were on DAZN, right? None of their pay-per-views are included in this subscription like we were told it would be. Now you have to pay extra for the stuff you're already paying to see. So this to me was a win because, hey, I didn't have to pay any more than my $20 that I pay a month anyway. Bet. You know what I'm saying? Who gives a shit who's fighting? I'm watching it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's where they win for me. Because if you'd have made me pay $100 to watch this, hell no. Hell, then there's no positive. I'm swinging from this. I'm swinging for the fences on this, right? I'm going in. But again, I think that the quality of the fights on the card outside of the spectacle were amazing. Like I turned it off after Katie and Amanda, but I'm telling you, I watched even the prelims on YouTube. Like I was watching it all.
And had Katie and Amanda been the main event, I think you would have had one of the best cards of the year. I think again, and it
should have been.
And this is kind of like, I guess, the last point I'll make about this matchup. But I think this is the issue with Jake's role in boxing. The main event is no longer about what's the most athletically significant fight. It's about what fight is going to get the most eyes. And we've seen that happen in other parts of entertainment, right? Like in the music industry, there's a lot of times where that happens based on, who do we think can bring eyes, not who's the best artist, right? It's definitely something that spans across more than just boxing, particularly in our culture.
Yeah, it's like that with the presidential election. Well, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there.
Listen, bro, we don't have to be afraid to talk about that because all these guys have no problem mouthing off about their politics too. Listen, we got a reality TV show president and we got a reality TV show main event. That's the slop we swim in. You know what I mean? And that's just what it is. I think that's where I get frustrated about Jake Paul's presence. Is I think that for people that don't understand boxing, he confuses them on what's actually the important fight here and why is it important. Is it important because he said it's important, or it's important because an undisputed fight, an undisputed rivalry is what's important? A fight of the year for a world title, you know, with a massive underdog like Abel Ramos is what's important. I think that's where I get frustrated.
And again, you're not wrong. You know, I'm trying to give the other side, and it's hard for me because I want to say all the things you're saying and some. I'll just say this: Barrios, Amanda, Katie, Abel, they wouldn't be getting the payday they got if it wasn't for the spectacle that none of us needed, right? No, none of us needed to watch old ass Mike Tyson damn near kill himself. And that's not hyperbole. Like literally, the man almost died on an airplane. You know what I'm saying? Then, like you said, he almost died in the lead up. This dude was taking he was having medical procedures done in between his training. Like people don't understand that, right? When you're a 60-year-old man, there's shit you got to do on a regular daily basis just to be okay, especially a guy who's lived the life Mike Tyson has lived, right? We all know Mike has lived a hard life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's that. I think you have to take the good with the bad. I'm trying to focus on the good because at the end of the day, look, there would not, as much as I despise the spectacle of the Tyson and Jake Paul fight, you have to look at it like this, bro. Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor doesn't happen in the level that it did without that. I mean, we don't get the first fight if Jake Paul isn't who he is. Like, and that's fucked up. Now we might get it, but we'd get it on a much smaller stage and a much smaller payday for those ladies. I mean, the world got to see one of the best female fights of all time, part 2 for their Netflix subscription, essentially, right?
There's no doubt that's true, bro. There's no doubt that because he's able to provide a bigger platform and bring them along for the ride, that it gets more eyes on them. It's undeniable. I just think that the trending in the main event being the one that gets the most eyes and not the most athletically significant, and then having, you know, almost really like character driven boxing where it's guys like Jake Paul and Ryan Garcia and Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., these guys that are entitled and kind of have a chip on their shoulder and don't necessarily follow the rules of the sport, and those are the guys that get rewarded. And I guess as a purist, man, it's just, that's a tough thing for me to swallow, brother.
Look, I'm trying to stay positive. Okay. Obviously, everybody who knows me knows I think this is the worst shit ever. They people who know me know what my opinion of Jake Paul is, really. As far as boxing, okay, I want to be very clear. When it comes to Jake Paul, the promoter, I think he's doing a fucking amazing job. And I think there are other people out there who should be taking notes, right? Because he gets asses in seats. Doesn't matter whether you like how he does it. Pay attention, bro. Like,
sure. And I think Jake Paul, I actually really agree with that. I think if Jake Paul was in the sport exclusively as a promoter and was helping to uplift, you know, significant athletes, I think that would be really good for boxing. Jesus M wants us to move on. I think he might be right. I think we may have run our course here. Let's get into what we really want to talk about.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
Hey, listen, bro. You know, the chat is the third member here, bro. Always. Katie Taylor getting another win over Amanda Serrano. Another tight flip a coin fight. If they fought 100 times, it probably would look something like this every single time. I had it 5 rounds apiece. Katie loses the point for the headbutt, which means that I had Amanda up by a point. When they said they had a 1-point fight, I kind of assumed it was going to be Amanda, but when they said Katie, I was disappointed, but I didn't feel like it was a robbery. Give me just your initial take on this fight. I know you felt like Amanda won, but how do you feel about this fight and where it sort of fits into their rivalry?
I think because of the result, it's going to skew the rivalry, right? A lot of people are going to look at it and say, "Oh, well, Katie Taylor beat Amanda Serrano twice." I don't. If you ask 10 people who watched both fights, right, who they thought won, you're going to get 10 different answers, right? There's no group of people that go, "Oh, Katie Taylor whooped Amanda Serrano's ass," the first time. No one's going to say that, even if you thought she won, right? If you thought she won the second fight, or in your case, you thought it was a draw, you're not saying she whooped Amanda Serrano's ass. And let's not forget, Amanda Serrano moved up 3 weight classes, folks. Not 1, not 2, but 3 weight classes to fight this woman. And in my opinion, won 7 out of 10 rounds. I thought she won 7-3. I could see 6-4, right? But even if you had it a draw, right? Even if you had this fight even, she should have still won because of the head.
Which is how I had it.
And she was head-butting like a motherfucker, Katie Taylor, that is, right? We can't deny it. Anybody who watches her fight knows she's a little dirty. You know what I mean? That's why we love her. You know what I'm saying?
There is sort of like that Josh Warrington thing where she's like really endearing and likable outside the ring, and then in the ring there are the dirty tactics. She does kind of dip low and come up with the top of her head.
That was her best shot.
There is a decent amount of holding. There is a decent amount of holding. At times where maybe fighters with not as big a name wouldn't be able to get away with it as much. But she's also has this weird, didn't I tell you this before the fight? Like, I'm leaning towards Amanda on this one, but Katie's got a thing where she just kind of figures it out. And she did that again. And you got to give her credit for that. There is something about Katie Taylor.
Did she?
She did.
I mean, look, bro, she won the fight on paper. But even people who weren't the biggest fans of Amanda Serrano thought she won that fight, bro. I've seen people online who were saying, "Yo, I think she won that fight." And to win and to not get in, I mean, look. So if you have her winning 95-94, that means you had her winning by 2 rounds anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see. I'm being honest here, right? Because you would have had to have said you had it 6-4 her. I don't see 6 rounds that she won in that fight. I could, if I rewatch it and I'm being super technical, I might be able to come to the same conclusion you did. It was a draw and Amanda won by a point. There were not 6 rounds I can clearly give to Katie Taylor. It's just
what it means is you're giving the swing rounds to Katie. That's what it means. And there were multiple close swing rounds, I would say. I think there was at least 2 or 3 rounds that were a little bit flip a coin. And if you gave all of those to Katie, you probably had her up 6-4.
I don't see it, bro. And then
I don't either, by the way.
You don't have to take my word for it. Go check the stats, bro. Go run the stats. Amanda won every statistical category. She didn't win some. She didn't win half. She won them all. And it was by a lot. It wasn't like she squeaked past her. She dominated the statistics. And when you look at the fight, even after the cut, bro, she was the aggressor, right? Usually that works in the boxer's favor. You're throwing more punches and you're the one coming forward. How did she lose? I don't get it. I'll say this, taking nothing away from Katie Taylor, because the result be damned. This was one of the most entertaining fights all year, bro. And I think that as far as women's fights goes, this is fight of the year. And I think that you can throw this in the conversation for fight of the year, period. You know what I'm saying? And I will say this, even if they weren't judging or scoring this fight, I could watch Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano fight every fucking month, because this is what you're going to get from both of them. And I love it, bro. I love it. And to Amanda's credit, she didn't whine and complain about it immediately after. She was like, "Hey, it is what it is. I'll go back and defend my titles, and we'll keep it pushing." I initially thought the winner of this was going to be pound for pound best. I don't think Katie Taylor won. I don't think this moved the needle for either one of them as far as pound for pound, because I think they're both still extremely great female fighters. But in my opinion, Katie Taylor has 4 losses on her record.
Well, and that's a great point, right? Like, I didn't think that Katie beat Chantel Cameron that last fight. I thought it was a close fight.
No.
That I'm pretty sure I scored that fight a draw as well. And of course, Katie gets the decision. There is something about Katie's style and her hand speed and how she puts, because she still got those fast hands, bro. Like, some of her footwork is not quite as good. She looks like she gasses a little more now, but she still got those good fast hands and she could put them together. There's something about her style and maybe it's her presence or her legacy that get these judges to lean her way, and she's able to do it, you know, over and over again in a very convincing fashion. It's part of what makes her great, whether you feel like you want it or she wanted or not, which neither of us do. You have to give it to her that she does kind of seem to find a way to pull out these close fights, whether it's this fight, whether it's the second Chantel Cameron fight, whether it's the first Delphine Persoon fight. She finds a way to pull these close ones out, bro. And I don't know if they're gonna fight again. There's a part of me that kind of hopes they do fight one more time and maybe they both retire. I'm not really sure what either of them do next. They're in their late 30s now, but they still look like they still have a little something left in the tank. It's going to be interesting to see what they both do next, man.
I'll be honest with you. I don't need to see it again.
You don't want to see them do that one more time?
I don't need to see it again because I think the same thing's going to happen, right? I think that we're going to get a hell of a fight. Now, don't get me wrong. I will watch this again, like I said, a million times. I don't need to see it again for legacy, right? I think that there's nothing either one of those ladies need to prove to any of us, right? Like I said, Amanda came up 3 weight classes to have this fight. She's a Guinness Book World Records holder. You know what I'm saying? She's in the Guinness Book of World Records. She's got more titles than any female boxer in the sport. Katie Taylor, you know, let's face it, she's got more balls than most men do and when in the ring, right? She reminds me of like a more talented Mickey Ward. You love them, you know what I mean? And they're gonna put everything, literally everything they have, into their fight, right? And you love to watch it. She just has more talent than he did. So I think that when it comes to both of these ladies, they don't have anything to prove. Will I watch it? Yes, but I don't need to see it again, because even if short of knocking Katie Taylor out, I don't think Amanda's going to get a decision. I don't know what it is.
Well, I think part of what it is that some of those exchanges maybe look more 50-50 than they are, because I think that Amanda's landing these big clean shots, but Katie's throwing really fast combinations. And if you're not watching really closely, you know, maybe it all just looks like, oh, that was 50-50. You know, and so if it's a bunch of 50-50 exchanges and then Katie does something fast on the outside, you're like, all right, it's a close round, but I got to lean towards Katie, you know.
And she missed a lot of those punches. Like,
sure.
I think, again, as boxing guys, we see this, right? As most casual fans don't. But as boxing guys, I see Amanda, even the punches that are landing by Katie, Amanda does a way better job of rolling with those, even up close, than Katie does with hers. Plus, Amanda's just a much harder puncher, right? Like she's got legitimate power, and you see every time she lands something significant, Katie doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Katie can land her Sunday punch on Amanda, and Amanda just keeps coming forward. So I think it's a difference, and you know, and again, even at that, even as fast as Katie is, Amanda still outlanded her. You know what I mean? And even though she was technically the smaller fighter, she even looked like the bigger fighter on fight night. Like, she looked like somebody who fights in that weight class. So, you know, again, I'm interested to see what both of them do next. I don't necessarily need to see them fight each other, but I would like to actually. I'd be more interested in seeing Katie fight Chantel Cameron again. I'd love to see them running back.
Yeah, me too.
And then I would just love for Amanda to just get another big payday and probably walk off into the sunset, bro. Like I don't want her to end her career on a loss. I'd be cool with her getting another big payday, getting a dub, and then saying I'm out of here. Maybe get into the promotional side or becoming a boxing coach. She's got knowledge out coming
Hey,
out of
and
the past.
and if we're lucky, maybe we could get like an action-packed fight between her and Delphine Persoon, which I think, as far as action fights, would be one of the best action fights in women's boxing. Abel Ramos getting what I would consider an upset draw against the reigning champ Mario Barrios, who really is like a capital G guy at welterweight, top 5 guy. Mario comes out sharp, man. He comes out really sharp. The jab's looking good. Everything's on the end of his combinations. He's quick. He's hurting Abel. And then those middle rounds, Abel turns it around and I think pushes the fight in a direction that none of us really saw coming. I don't think any of us really expected Abel to be able to start dictating the terms of that fight the way that he did, and wound up getting a draw. Abel Ramos has been in with so many top guys at welterweight. He's just constantly in tough, difficult fights. And to get a draw in this fight, which I would say is the biggest of his career, was a truly incredible moment to watch, and also probably the fight of the year.
I mean, who doesn't? I mean, if you really love boxing, you love guys like Abel Ramos, bro. You know what I'm saying? And what's crazy is, both of these guys had a knockdown in the fight. Like you said, Barrios got his early. Abel was able to get his in the 6th, but Abel's was even more impressive. Barrios was really hurt. Abel got, Abel's, when he got knocked down, was more of a flash knockdown. He was able to get up right away, kind of smiled it off. Hey, okay, you caught me with a good punch. Mario was in some trouble when he went down in the 6th. But to his credit, and this is why I love Mario Barrios, bro. He talks the talk and walks it later. You know what I'm saying? He tells you I got the heart of a warrior and balls of steel, and then shows up and shows you that he really does. Lesser fighters probably would have went down and stayed down, or got TKO because he just stood there and welted under pressure. He came back and he fought his way out of a tough situation.
And close strong, bro. Close strong.
Oh,
probably doesn't get the draw if he doesn't close as strong as he did.
His jab is surgical, bro. His jab was doing work. I don't know why he didn't stick to it more, but his jab was, every time he got on that stick, it was moving. I'll say this, man. Fight of the year contender, period. I thought Barrios had edged it. I think I had him up, by a round, but I'm not mad at the draw at all. Not mad at it at all.
I thought it was a very fair result. There was, again, another one where there's multiple close rounds. I think I also had it 114, 112 for Barrios. So a draw is just one of those swing rounds, went the other way. I can't be mad at it. The one thing I am wondering is, and this is not taking anything away from Abel, bro. Abel had the fight of his life and deserves whatever comes next for him. Hopefully it's a rematch with Barrios. But it does seem like at a couple times in his career that Barrios starts boxing a certain kind of way, and then the fight turns into a more physical fight that doesn't serve him in the best way, and then he's able to get it back. But I feel like this isn't the first time that we've seen him kind of lose control over the tempo of a fight. I was wondering if you noticed that as well. Why do you think that is?
I think what happens is he gets enamored with his own success, right? So even if you notice in the Tank fight, he was winning those first couple of rounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he starts to take pictures. You know what I'm saying? He's like, okay, I'm doing my thing. He's one of those guys who's super fucking talented and does the work. So his early start is amazing. He looks like, the next coming, right? When he's starting off. But then, the guy he's fighting catches him with something, makes him think twice, and then it becomes a firefight. And not that he can't do firefights, because I think he showed, this weekend he can do a firefight.
Yeah, he's got balls to spare.
Yeah, and he's got a hell of a fucking chin. Let's not. I mean, he took a thumping from Keith Thurman. The fact that he made it through that fight was impressive as fuck to me. But he's got all the tools you want a fighter to have. You know what I'm saying? I think when he's doing well, if he can avoid the taking pictures part, right, and just be in killer mode the whole time, he wouldn't have this trouble. But you can see him, like, he'll start to get a little pretty with it, and then it's like, okay, bro, and then he has to dig himself out of a hole because he's allowed the other person to kind of work themselves back into it.
And I just wonder, with a guy with that type of skills, because when he's in a rhythm, bro, he really does have an incredible skill set. I wonder if he shortens his career and his lifespan in the sport, when he allows fights to get this physical. The flip side of that, though, is that the fight doesn't get that physical if Abel Ramos doesn't have the kind of grit and dig down that he has, that not very many guys have. You get beat like that in the first 4 or 5 rounds of a fight, a lot of guys just can't come back. And Abel's been in that position in big fights like this so many times. Unfortunately, most of them being in losses, but he's learned those lessons, bro. And even as a guy, a veteran in his mid-30s, he's still learning lessons. And it was just this to me was the highlight of the night in a lot of ways. As great as Katie and Amanda were, this fight was a whole different level to me.
I think this was, to me, for those that don't really know boxing, right, this was the surprise of the night, because we all expected what we got from Katie and Amanda, right? You knew that was coming. You know what I'm saying? The spectacle fight was the spectacle fight. We kind of expected that to be what it was, even though we were overhyped about it, right? I mean, it's Mike Tyson. Everybody wanted to see what was going to happen, right? But everybody goes, hold on, wait a minute. Who are these two dudes? You know what I mean? Those that haven't been following, they're like, these two dudes are kicking ass. What's going on? Let me pay attention. For those of you who have followed Mario Barrios, this was par for the course. You're like, hey, this is what he does. You know what I mean? For those that have watched Abel Ramos, like you just pointed out, hey, this is what they do. We expected that from them,
right?
And they even exceeded our expectations, which is crazy. Because
it made me think back to a great performance by Abel a few years back against a fantastic fighter named Bryant Peralta, and he's losing almost every round of that fight, and knocks Peralta out within the last 10 seconds of the fight. And it was just, that was kind of a classic Abel Ramos moment, where it don't matter how many losses he have, and it don't matter how many rounds he's lost, he's still a threat. And even here at a world title fight, where people are going, what is Boots Ennis doing fighting this guy Karen Chukagian? What is Mario Barrios doing fighting this guy Abel Ramos? They should be fighting each other. Well, Abel Ramos showed you why he was in the ring that night.
This is for all of those guys out there that are boxers who think that a loss ends your career. Abel Ramos, look to the guys like Abel Ramos, right? If you fight like that every time, right? If you have the heart, if you have the balls and the skill, right? You can have, like, even if you lose, people who saw Abel Ramos get a draw want to see him fight again, right? Mario Barrios took 2 losses in a row and people were writing him off. You know what I mean? This dude's a world champion and just gave us one of the best fights we've seen all year. You know what I mean? You want to see that again, don't you? Who doesn't? Like, if you watch that fight and you weren't inspired by that, either one of these guys' performances, you're dead inside. And I think that that's what this sport is about, So kudos to both of those guys. Obviously, for me, the fight of the night was Serrano and Katie, but this was, 1A, 1B for me. This was top-notch stuff, bro. And you can't pull that off if both of those guys aren't as skilled as they are. You don't get this if we got 2 club fighters in the ring. This is high skill stuff, bro.
Absolutely, and they were setting their shots up. As much as it was a physical hard fight, it was also a tactical fight, right? Like Abel had to figure out how to close that distance, and he did. And once he closed the distance, Mario had to figure out how to get it back, and he did. And it was high level shit. It was amazing watching those two guys kind of work their way through the fight. You know, the card opener with Niraj Goya, I really feel no need to talk about. He did the Broner Maidana and starts humping the guy. Strange performance. There's some things to like about that guy, but I'm going to very happily move on from that unless you have a lot to say. The fight that I'm really interested in talking about right at this moment is my girl Shadeja Green winning the WBO title against Melinda Watpool. There's no denying it was a close fight, bro. And I try to stay as impartial as I can when I'm watching fighters that I know or that I'm personally, involved with on some level. It was a close fight. Again, not her best night. I and the couple of homies I had sitting with me felt like she pulled it out, felt like she nicked it. Um, and she's a great person, and I'm thrilled that after all these years of getting told no with her skill set to finally get the validation of having a world title. I look forward to seeing Shadeja fill the champ's shoes, right? The best example of that was when Sor Rungvisai beat Chocolatito the first time. And he wasn't the same fighter after. He was a whole different level. He was a whole other monster because he filled the champ's shoes. I believe Shadeja will fill the champ's shoes, and I'm really proud of her for getting over the hump on this one, and she deserves it.
I love Shadeja Green. You know what I mean? And not just because she's a friend of the channel, because I love the way, especially early on, I loved watching her work. The fight lives that you guys have done have been amazing. The behind the scenes stuff. She's a great person. You know what I mean? So obviously we're all here at ITR. We're invested in Shadeja, and her doing her thing is amazing. I'll say this: the only knock I have against Shadeja is I feel like her last 3 or 4 fights. I keep saying this: she did enough to win,
Mm-hmm.
right? She didn't, and she could have and should have dominated those fights. I'll give her opponent all the credit in the world. The girl came to fight. It was a championship fight, and she came to fight like it was a championship fight. However, I think Shadeja was miles ahead of her as far as talent is concerned, and could have made this a much easier fight for herself than it was. And I think that, I don't know if she could have stopped her because it looked like the girl had a decent chin on her, but I think she could have definitely won by a mile, if she really wanted to. And this could have been easy. And it ended up being, well, Shadeja did enough to get the win. You know what I'm saying? So that's my only knock. Hats off to her. All the hard work has paid off. She got the strap. And I hope she does exactly what you say. I hope she does the work now to not just keep the belt, but to build on her legacy and build on the things that she's not doing well, so that no one can ever say again she just won. You know what I'm saying? So I look, anytime she fights, I'm tuning in, and I thought she did again. I thought she did enough. If I'm being down the middle about it, right? If I'm not being a homer, I think she did just enough.
It was a 6-4 type of fight, and Watpool showed accuracy that I didn't necessarily anticipate. She had a level of class to her that it was like, okay, this girl's in a title fight for a reason. We're not just waltzing to a world title here. The thing,
Mhm.
and then and I'm being impartial as well. The thing, like you said, just doing enough. I think sometimes, and some of this may have to do with some of the mental health things that she's experiencing, or it just looks like she's a little tight. And when you've seen some of the performances, like the Elin Cederos performance or the Curry performance, and you see how fluid and loose she can be in the ring, sometimes you just want to see her pick something. And if that's coming forward and beating the girl up for the round, let's do that. If that's getting up on your toes and boxing for a round, let's do that. But it also felt like the commentators, because there was a couple rounds down the stretch where she did get up on her toes and she was working behind a jab. And I actually thought it looked pretty good. But the commentators are going, oh, she's not trying to get the knockout. What is she doing? And I'm like, well, I don't know that this girl gets knocked out. She might be tougher than that. So now what we got to do is separate and use our skills And I felt like she kind of did that. And I think that when you see the versatility, you see how many different things that she can go to, you want to see her dominate a fight like that, so that there is no question about who Claressa Shields should fight next. There is no question about who the most interesting opponent is for the GWOAT. It's Shadasia Green. And maybe a performance like this doesn't make it as obvious as it should be.
I think it's one of those things where, you know, when you see somebody who's really, really talented, right? Like they've got a whole bunch of tools in their toolbox, and they can't choose which tool to use. You know what I mean? So they spend a lot of times thinking about, hey, which way should I go? You see it all the time. Basketball players, you see football players who've got more talent in their pinkies than we'll ever have, no matter how hard we work. And you go, how come that guy isn't great? Right? How come that guy isn't Michael Jordan? He can do all these things physically, right? Because he's thinking about what he should do. He's thinking too much. A lot of that is just getting in there and doing it, right? If you look at some of the greats, they're really good at just being able to do what it is they know what to do, right? They'll have a game plan, and yeah, they can make adjustments on the fly, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Go in there, do what you do it well, and when it's working, it works. If it ain't working, then go to plan B, then C, right? But it seems like Shadasia is trying to get plan A through F off in one round. It's like, nah, we don't need to see all your. We know you're great. We don't need to see all of it. We need to see what works for this fight. Do that and get through it, and I guarantee you, it'll look a lot cleaner, right? But she's got so many things that she's good at. She wants us to see them all. Or she might, sometimes you see her getting caught up in trying to get the knockout. I think that's what made this fight a little sloppy for her. I think she was trying to get a knockout because she was trying to be spectacular.
And then she had her buzzed. I think it was either the 6th or the 7th round. She had her legitimately buzzed. And that's where it's like, all right, now we got to really use the skills and set the shots up. Now's not the time to force the shots. Now's the time to set up the shots. And again, there's other fighters like this in history, right? Like Zab Judah had so much talent, and there'd be entire rounds where you're just watching and waiting. Josh Kelly, another one like that, bro. Probably one of the most naturally gifted fighters in England right now. And when you see him let his hands go and he's doing his thing, it's like, yo, this guy's kind of magical. And then he settles into the fight, and there's just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And what my hope is now that Shadasia has become the world champ, like I said, that she's going to fill the champ shoes and hopefully be able to rise up above the Zab Judah and the Josh Kelly level of the sport.
I think, and that's hard to do because, you're talking about Hall of Fame talent type guys. You know what I mean? At one point, Zab Judah was considered one of the best fighters, period. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but still massively underachieved relative. It's like, but all that's mental shit. It's the difference between Floyd Mayweather and Zab Judah. It's the difference between Josh Taylor and Josh Kelly is the mental part.
And you saw that in Floyd's fight with Zab, right? It was the mental stuff. It wasn't talent at all. If you those first 4 rounds, you might even argue Zab was more talented than Floyd naturally, right? But Floyd's game up here is unmatched, I think. And again, people don't give enough credit for that, right? The reason Mike Tyson was a killer was, he's physically, you can't teach hitting like a mule. You know what I mean? Either you have that or you don't. It's the Deontay Wilder effect, right? You can't teach that right hand. It is what it is. But Mike Tyson's mental game, like his understanding of the boxing game, and I don't think a lot of people understand that Mike Tyson is a boxing genius. Like the amount of boxing knowledge he has, if you sat down and talked with him, I think most people would be surprised about how much he knows about the sport of boxing. That's what made him a kid. He understood, hey, if I hit you here, the next punch I throw is going to be here because it's going to be available, right? So that's why he was able to devastatingly knock people out, is because he understood the mechanics of it. So I think that's part of it, but I also think, again, bro, I don't know if it's there needs to be a change in her camp, and I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers. If there needs to be a change in her camp, or if there needs to be a change internally within herself, or both, but there needs to be a change to where she gets to a point where she understands talent and hard work in the knowledge that you need to make it all work. But again, I think if you just look at her just on talent alone, she should, she shouldn't lose any fights. And that's just on talent. You know what I mean? Just God-given natural ability. Shadasia Green shouldn't lose a fight, period.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, bro. The other two preliminary fights, Lucas Body beating Armando Casamonica, and then Bruce Carrington beating Dana Coolwell. I unfortunately was still on the clock for those two fights. Nibs, do you have any thoughts or notes about either of these two guys? Obviously, Shushu, still one of the most exciting guys coming off of a really tough fight against Suleiman Sagawa. That was kind of a flip a coin type fight, coming back really fast. Any notes on either of these guys while I go get water?
Yeah, I'll say this, bro. Shushu is a killer. And I think that anybody who watches his fights, you got to understand this dude is about to be big time. And I think he just showed it. I think this was more of a showcase fight for him than anything else. So that would be my take on that. I think the rest of the card was just kind of what we expected. I didn't really have much to say about you alluded to the YouTuber fight with what's it, Goyat? Is that his name? Goyat calls himself the GOAT or some shit like that. That was the silliest thing I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys in the comments section we're watching that fight, but I tell you, Jesus Him says Bruce Carrington still needs a lot of improvement. I mean, look, are there things he needs to work on? Yes, but I still think he's a killer. I think that, and when he has somebody in trouble, he knows what to do with it. You know what I mean? But I
He's
will
also
say,
27 years old now, and he came up with a class of prospects that are all a little bit younger than him. He's kind of the oldest of the Troy Isley, Jahai Tucker class of prospects. Is he ready for the top guys at featherweight? Is he ready for the winner of Espinosa and Ramirez? Is he ready for Angel? Now of course I'm going to forget his name. The guy that beat Venado. Is he ready for all these guys? Because he's
I think now is the time to find out. I think now is the time to find
Angelo
out.
Leo. Now that I'm remembering, Angelo Leo.
I think now is the time to find out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you said, he's not getting any younger. Yes, he's still technically young in his career, but I think where he's at right now, I think we need to throw him in the fire a little bit, bro. And I usually don't say that, but I think at 27, throw him in there, man. If anything, he gets great experience, and I don't think it'd be throwing him to the wolves. Look, a lot of people thought putting Tank in against Pedraza was a mistake, and we saw how that worked out. You know what I'm saying? Some guys have it, and I think Shushu has it, bro. Are there things I'd like to see him work on? Of course. You could say that about any guy, who's uber talented, but I think he can fix it. There's a difference, right? We see a lot of these dudes, and we're like, I'd love to see them work on it. And we've been saying that for 4 or 5 years, and they haven't even looked like they're trying to fix it. You know what I'm saying? I think if Shushu sees that he needs to fix something, it gets fixed. So I'm not worried about him. I think now's the time to throw him in there and see what happens.
Saturday's card was really the big card for me, man. I mean, Zurdo Ramirez getting what I would call a pretty impressive win over Chris Billum Smith. I've been joking that I feel like Zurdo is kind of like the new Tyson Fury, right? Because there are things about maybe his conditioning or his discipline or his lifestyle that are lacking or you'd want to see more from an elite level guy. But there's just that talent component, dude. He just has that raw ability and that talent component. And clearly, when we talk about training hard, right? Of course, he trains hard. We're talking about when you get up to the elite level, how the other elite guys are training. He may not be training as hard as those guys. I don't think he trains as hard as Chris Billum Smith, but what he is he's way more talented and has a type of footwork and hand speed and combination punching that most guys at cruiserweight don't have. He developed those at super middleweight and light heavyweight and is now bringing that skill set to cruiserweight where it's extremely effective. You know, I knew a lot of people thought that maybe Billum Smith was just going to be too physical and too disciplined, coming off wins over Lawrence Okoli and Richard Riakporhe. Maybe this is the guy at this weight. And with the exception of the first couple of rounds, you know, it was a rough fight, but Zurdo really separated himself. And I think kind of proved that with the exception of Jai Opetaia, which hopefully that's a fight that gets made, you know, Zurdo's a top 3 guy at cruiserweight, whether you like how he handles his business or not.
I mean, it's to your point. It's hard not to think CBS was going to come in there and dominate anybody. I mean, you know, pause. If you look at the dude, he looks like he's built out of granite. First off, you know what I'm saying?
And he looked
dude,
a lot bigger than Zurdo when they started fighting.
Right. The guy looks like he should be a fighter. You know what I'm saying? If you had never met Chris Billum Smith before and you saw him with a shirt off, you go, "Oh, that dude beats people up for a living." You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it is. You look at Zurdo, you be like, that dude drinks a lot. You know what I mean?
Or if he was like a normal guy, you'd be like, oh, he probably, you know, works out a couple times a week.
Yeah. He looks like he goes to the gym. That's you know, but he also goes to happy hour after. You know what I'm saying? But I will say this: he looked in a lot better shape this time around than the last time I saw him. So I will say that he does look like obviously he's taking his training camps very serious. How he made 168, I'll never know. Like he must have been absolutely murdering himself to make that weight, bro. This dude's gonna be a heavyweight at some point. I think. I don't think I think he's having a glass of tea with the fucking cruiserweight division. I think he's going to be fighting at heavyweight before we know it, bro. Just size wise, right? Like he looks like he should be a heavyweight at some point. But you could say the same thing about CBS. So
yeah, I thought that Chris looked like the naturally way bigger guy. I thought he looked thicker. His shoulders were broader. Like he just looked like a career cruiserweight, whereas Zurdo looked like a guy. Yeah, he's cruiserweight size, but he looked like he could cut some weight too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
but that's just his lifestyle, like you said, right? Like it's the boy loves to enjoy himself, and I'm not mad at that. When you've got the talent he does to overcome any of the shortcomings you might have in the gym, you know what I mean? I'm gonna tell you this though, bro. Zurdo's a problem at cruiserweight, and I don't know that the other belt holders are clamoring to get a piece of him. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't, to be honest with you, I don't think they really wanted to fight CBS. I think they were kind of like, yeah, let's, you know, maybe, you know, down the line, if I have to fight that guy, I will. I think Zurdo's going to fall in that line. Like, hey, if I have to fight him, let's make it happen. But I don't think anybody really wants that smoke because he's legit, bro. And and hats off to him. It was a great fight because, you know, that could have went the other way and it didn't. Hats off to him. I thought it was a great fight.
Do you think that Zurdo and Jai Opetaia will fight? And do you think that that's a fight that
Zurdo
has a chance?
I would love to see it. I think Jai's on a whole nother level.
I tend to feel that way as well when I watch him and I see the hand speed and how destructive his power is. You know, he definitely is doing something that these other cruiserweights are not doing. He's got a level of move, like he moves like a middleweight, like a super middleweight. You know what I mean? But I also think that Zurdo brings a fluidity and a skill set that nobody else brings to cruiserweight. So I think they're both going to be showing each other something that they've never seen before. All that being said, it does kind of feel like as good as he is at giving angles and putting combinations, there's a lot of things he's good at. He's still kind of hittable at times, and he does get caught. And at some point, I think Jai will catch him. But that is a fight that I would love to see.
His footwork is like, I think Zurdo doesn't get credit a lot of times because of the things you talked about, right? He loves to party. You know, he might not always come in with the six pack or this, that, and the third, right? And okay, you know what I mean. You don't need to be chiseled, to be a boxer. You just have to have talent and be good. But I will say this though, his footwork is amazing. His, like you said, I mean, he was turning CBS around all night like a merry-go-round. You know what I'm saying? He was spinning them around, getting into to the right angles, landed punches. I don't even think Chris was ready for it, because I don't think he had fought anybody who was able to do those things to him like Zurdo had done before. So I think, but I think Jai is one of those guys you're not going to be able to do that to, right? You're probably going to have to stand and bang with him a little bit. And I don't think anybody really wants to do that with Jai because he's going to win that battle 9 times out of 10. I think the way Zurdo would win that is he has to be on his boxing stick. He's got to box his ass off. He's got to have his best game, to have a chance against Jai. But I think it would be a great fight. I think it would be an absolutely great fight. And you could put that on one of the bigger pay-per-views too, right? Like if not be the main event, that could like if Tank did an event, you could put that as the co-main event and people would go fucking crazy. You know what I mean? That could do numbers. You could put it on a Canelo card. You know what I mean? You could put it on any one of these big stars. That could be Fury and Usyk undercard. Like that's how big a fight that is, bro.
I think Jesus M to also, I think that speaks to some of what we're talking about, where the lifestyle doesn't always match the talent. And so he does, even in a fight like this where he gets a tremendous win, there's still like this feeling that maybe he took more punishment than he really needed to. And I think that we're just going to have to kind of accept the guy for what he is. He's a really good, maybe great fighter who I don't think is ever going to hit the absolute peak of his potential.
But I think that's what makes him watchable, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what makes even the casual fans go, hey, he's almost like a big Rocky. You know what I'm saying? Like he's there to get hit, but he's going to give you the business back. You know what I mean? So that's another thing too. You got to be ready to take 2 back for the 3 you might give Zurdo. So, and that again, that makes him a fan favorite. People are going to want to watch that fight because they know he can be hit, but he's going to give some back. People love that Rock'em Sock'em Robot shit, bro.
Well, it wasn't Rock'em Sock'em, but Arnold Barboza got a pretty impressive win over Jose Ramirez. These guys have been circling each other for a long time, and Arnold has kind of been, one more fight and you're in the big fight, and he's kind of been in that spot for probably like 6 years now, and I'm sure it's been incredibly frustrating for him. And to finally get an opportunity against the big name top guy in his weight class, and to really kind of give him a boxing lesson. I thought that Ramirez was competitive, but I thought that Arnold basically dominated the fight. It must be super validating. And I can't think of a fighter right now who deserves it as much as Barboza does.
I mean, he was begging for it, in his post-fight interview. He's like, yo, give me anybody. I'll fight any of these champs out. He was like, please, give me whatever it is. And I'm on it. And you're right. He's deserved it, bro. Like and there are going to be a lot of people's feathers that are ruffled over what he said and saying, hey, look, I've been here, like you said, 6-7 years. I'm the number one guy. Right. And I keep getting jumped over by these guys that come into the division because they got bigger names or, these other guys. Right. People keep ducking me or paying me off, this, that, and the third. Hey, Susim, I don't agree with you. We can agree to disagree. But I'll say this, though. You have to give credit to Ramirez as well. You know what I mean? There weren't a lot of people who wanted to take the Barboza fight, and he did.
Because fighting Arnold was high risk, low reward. You're fighting a super skilled guy that not that many people know. And so if you beat him, they're going to go, who's this guy anyway? And if you lose to him, they go, who's this guy that you lost to? So it takes balls to take fights like that. And if there's one thing about Jose Ramirez, he's been the guy at 140 that's really been willing to fight anybody. And, he's had a tremendous career, a lot of hard fights. I'd really like to see him move up to welterweight. I heard the commentators talk about weight cuts multiple times, and there were times where I felt like he wasn't reacting the way he once did, when he fought Josh Taylor and fought Mo Hooker and some of the
It's not the first
highlights.
time we've had that conversation with him about him either, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think if he wants to continue having a career at a high level, I think he's still got gas in the tank, but I think it's time to make that change. And I hope that Barbosa is able to catapult this win into something else bigger. But this is the kind of win that he's been seeking for so long. And despite what our friend Jesus says, I thought he won it pretty clean. I thought he won at least 7-8 rounds of the fight. And part of how you beat a guy like Jose is you make it a skills fight. You don't make it a physical fight. If you make it a physical fight, Jose probably beats you. Even if you make it a skills fight, he might beat you. But when you have skills like Arnold Barboza, you have to use them if you're going to beat a guy like Jose Ramirez.
Who would you like to see Barboza get in with next?
Man, it's tough because there's a lot of really good guys up at 140 right now. And prior to this, I thought Arnold lost his last fight. So there's other guys who have kind of come to the forefront now, guys like Liam Paro, guys like Richardson Hitchens. There's a new cast of characters at this weight. But if I'm picking who I want to see him in with, personally, I would love to see him and Teofimo fight. I thought that was a good matchup for a really long time. I don't know what Teofimo Lopez is trying to do with his career right now, if he's trying to have a legacy-driven boxing career, if he's trying to have a character and money-driven boxing career. But if he's looking for a legacy-driven boxing career, I think that would be a tremendous fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody kind of wants the TO lottery at 140, right? Because I mean, let's face it, I think he's still the biggest payday in the division, obviously.
For sure.
Of course, I'd be glad to see that fight. I wouldn't be angry with either the Paro or even though he doesn't, even though he doesn't have a strap right now, even Matias, right? I'd love to see, because I think those are bigger fights, right? But if he's just trying to get a strap next, I'd like to see him fight Paro. I mean, Teofimo. I mean, obviously, I'd like to see Teo fight anybody of consequence next. So, so of course, yeah, you give me Barboza and Teo, I'm signing up for that. So, hell, if Haney can do whatever the fuck he wants, I think Barboza, that'd be a great fight. I don't, maybe stylistically it isn't as exciting as most people want to see, but I think it'd be a great fight.
But on some nerd shit, like I would love to see those guys have a chess match. I would love to watch that play out. Another guy that I think is worth mentioning, kind of like Arnold, doesn't have the biggest name, but Andy Hiraoka just got a tremendous knockout win over Ishmael Barroso, which puts him now in the top 5 on BoxRec. Jack Catterall and Arnold Barboza are two of the smartest guys in the division. Why not have them square up and see who comes out of that 6-man position, because I think that's who would basically be the 6th man of the division. I think Jack Catterall and Arnold Barboza is a real fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think the thing that would make that not happen is both of those guys are looking for bigger fights. I think Barboza might be more open to it than Catterall, but I think Catterall is saying, "Hey, I'm already a champion, basically." You know what I mean? I didn't lose to Taylor. I've beaten these other guys that were champs. I think he wants a strap next. I think,
and he deserves it. Deserved
yeah.
it. You're coming off wins over Regis Prograis and Josh Taylor. I think you deserve whatever fight you can get at 140. But if none of those guys will fight him, I'm sure
convincing wins too.
Will.
And convincing wins over 2 former champions, right? Barboza, as convincing as his fights may be, these guys aren't champs right now, or in recent history have been champs. Regis Prograis, what, a year ago? year or two ago, was a champ. Josh Taylor, within a short time frame ago, was a champ. You know what I mean? And I think that I think Catterall's next fight is going to be against a world champion. I think Barbosa, again, he'd be much more open to it because it would be a bigger fight. I think both of them, though. I think both of them deserve a title fight next. You know what I mean? So I'd be open to any of the champions saying yes. I think the one that would be more realistic because, again, I just feel like Teal's on some other shit would probably be Paro. But Catterall, I think he's enticing to other guys because I don't think they think he can hurt them. You know what I mean? But Barbosa, again, he's not a big enough name. You know what I mean? Where Jack Catterall is a bigger name. So I think he'll get there first. But sign me up, bro. I again, to nerd out, I'd love to see him and Haney fight.
Absolutely, dude. Another great fight on this card, William Zepeda getting a split decision over, or a unanimous, I'm sorry, yeah, split decision over Tevin Farmer. I thought Zepeda edged it, but an incredible performance by Farmer. I think even myself, I kind of expected a dominant performance by Zepeda, and Farmer able to drop him early in the fight, really make him think a lot more than I think he probably has in his entire career. The only thing that I'll say is that I feel like Tevin down the stretch in this fight and in the Morataya fight is losing his sharpness. And a lot of times that's kind of what's separating him from these other guys that are in the top 5 is they're getting better the last 2 rounds. And it looks like Tevin's kind of holding on. And I felt like that happened in this fight. I felt like it happened in the Morataya fight. And ultimately Zepeda, who is a really overwhelming style to be in with, gets the job done, and Farmer proven that he's still, absolutely a certified contender.
I think he just ran out of gas. To be honest with you, I think Tevin Farmer wins this fight if his gas tank was bigger. I thought to me, and here's the thing. I think that Tevin Farmer put on the fight of his life and damn near beat a dude most people thought was going to whoop his ass for, you know what I mean? If not get him out of there. And the fact that he hurt Zepeda and not the other way around, and let's be real clear. Farmer was in no trouble, no serious trouble the whole fight. You know what I'm saying? He got dinged a couple of times.
But what he did was he got out hustled down the stretch because he's not as reactive in the pocket in the last 3 rounds anymore. He's cool with kind of just taking the body shots as opposed to rolling and countering. It's just a little bit more stagnant, at least in the last 3-4 rounds of his last couple fights.
I think for me, and I had him edging it just because of the knockdown. I actually had it a draw, but I gave him the edge because of the knockdown. But I'm not mad at Zepeda getting the win because there were a lot of close rounds, and maybe I was being a little partial to Tevin Farmer, you know what I'm saying? Because I want to see this dude do well. And the fact that he was actually in there busting in his ass, like you there's one thing you can't say about Tevin Farmer is that he's a quitter. The dude came in there and was I don't think I've seen him throw as many punches, that many punches in any fight. I mean, he was active, you know what I'm saying? So I think I gave him a couple of the closer rounds, but I wasn't mad at the decision. I was like, okay, this could go either way, or a draw maybe, But I think it was a hell of a fight. Again, let's be really clear. We just had a really fucking good weekend of boxing, bro. Like, this has been a really good year. Another good year. I wouldn't say banner year, but pretty fucking close to it for boxing, bro. Like, we've been spoiled the last couple of years with some really good boxing schedules, like throughout the year. So kudos to the people making the matchups. We've had some really good bangers. But I think this was one of those fights that surprised people because I think you were expecting it to go one way, and we ended up having a fucking war. You know what I mean? By guys we didn't expect to get a war from. So hats off to both guys. And I think the commentators said it the best. I don't think Tevin Farmer should, and at the I love what his wife or girlfriend, I don't know if they're married or not, what she did. He's in the corner after the fight. He's got his head down. She comes over and lifts his chin up, and she's whispering the sweet nothings into his ear. And I said, That's perfect because Tevin Farmer should not be hanging his head after the performance he gave this last weekend. And I think because of this performance, he'll get another big fight, maybe another chance to prove himself. And he's a guy, like you said, he's a guy. I think if he can work on that gas tank and put in another effort like this, who knows what can happen next for him. But I do think that he's, here's the top of the division. He's right here. You know what I mean? So, but that makes for great fights too. So we'll see.
And as far as Zepeda, I feel like Zepeda's kind of been in a similar position as Barboza in terms of like, you're one away from the big one. So it's like they've been dangling, Shakur Stevenson fight over here. So we're going to put you in with Tevin to see how you deal with the slicker style. Or, we're going to put you in with Maxie Hughes because he just, got jobbed against Kambosos, and that's a tough fight. And then he actually winds up dominating that fight. Unless it's, if Tank Davis is going to fight Lamont Roach, you might as well fight William Zepeda, dude. It's a guy that's actually in your weight class, and I think people would be more interested. If Shakur Stevenson can't get a fight with Tank Davis, why would you not take a fight with William Zepeda, particularly when you see how well Tevin Farmer did? If you're Lomachenko and you're on the fence about retiring and you need a credible guy, why not have it be William Zepeda? If you're Dennis Baranchik and you want to have a legit title defense, why not Zepeda? If you're Keyshawn Davis and you're looking for people to call you a real guy in the division, why not Zepeda? I'm just dying to see this guy in with one of the other top guys of the weight class.
I think it's a name thing, right? Like it's, we run into this a lot. High risk, low reward, right? Is William Zepeda going to put asses in the seats at the end of the day? For us, yeah, like we want to see this. We want to see him get those opportunities. But it comes down to, how much money can you generate, bro? Yeah, you've got the machine behind you. You got Golden Boy, right? But let's be really clear. If you ask most people who William Zepeda is, they were like, who? Unless you're in boxing and you know boxing and you've watched these cards like we have.
Let's
right?
not get it twisted, bro. The only guy at lightweight that isn't that is Tank. The rest of it is all boxing guys. You know what I mean? So if the end goal is ultimately get a fight with Tank, start fighting each other.
And that's another thing. I'm so glad you brought that up. There are so many people that are like, well, Tank's fighting these trash fighters. No, he's not fighting the guys you want him to fight, right? But that isn't all Tank either. Everybody wants the Shakur Stevenson fight. Everybody was, begging for the Haney fight before he moved up. And it's like, let's be really clear. These dudes don't really want to fight Tank. You know what I'm saying? They don't really want to fight him. They want the money, but they don't really want to get in there. You know what I'm saying? So let's be real clear on that. And he's not fighting bums, bro. Like these dudes have earned their way up to a Tank fight, and they're good fighters. He just makes it look easier than everybody else. So that's the issue that Tank has. I don't think unless he's fighting Muhammad Ali next, most people are going to give him shit for who he's fighting. But again, he'll run into that if Tank were to say, okay, I'll fight William Zepeda, there are going to be a million people talking about who the fuck is William Zepeda. You know what I mean? You and I are going to be like, thank God. Yeah, finally somebody, I can get behind.
Yeah, but I even feel like on optics, he's fight. Zepeda's 32-0 with 27 knockouts. He has a fan-friendly style. He's exciting to watch, and he's kind of hittable. So if you're Tank Davis, that's a win-win, I would think. But it clearly the direction of Tank's career is something that I'm not going to understand, because I think he's the best guy anyway. So you line him up, he's going to knock him down. But clearly, that's not what they're doing over there. They're doing something else.
I think it's, can you sell it, right? It ultimately would Tank at this point.
Yeah, but can you sell Lamont Roach, really? And I think Lamont's a great fighter. He's just not in the weight class. So, again, I totally get the argument you're saying. If he was getting, big names to get in the ring with him, but he's already taking fights for the most part that I think the public is not interested in or knows about. So why not have it be Shakur or Zepeda or Morataya or somebody that has a legitimate chance.
I want to say this, and I don't know if he'll ever see this or not, but I'm gonna tell you something. Shakur talks a lot of shit for somebody who doesn't sign the check. Look, Shakur has talked a lot of shit about fighting Tank. Tank's crew put out and I don't know if everybody saw it, but Tank's crew put out a report last year. He offered Shakur a shitload of money to fight him, and Shakur turned it down. Right? So now, and then when asked about it, Shakur ducked the question. Let's be real clear. Shakur does not want to fight Tank Davis, bro. He wants to get paid a shitload of money if he does, or he wants to be the A side. I think these guys are trying to position themselves to a point to where they can say they're the A side to Tank so they can get a shitload of money to fight him because they know they're going to lose. That's what Devin Haney did, right? And then he priced himself out of the Tank fight. His ask was ridiculous when he got all those belts. And it's like, bro, I don't give a fuck how many belts you have. Tank is still the guy. You know what I'm saying? It's like the Floyd Mayweather effect. It's the Canelo effect. We talked about this, with Canelo and Bivol, right? When Bivol was trying to make all these demands for the rematch, it's like, hey, my guy, Canelo's still the dude. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand the landscape here, and I think that's what it is. Now, is there some fault on Tank's part as well? I'm pretty sure there is. He's probably asking for some stuff now just because he's pissed off. But I think he's fighting who's signing the dotted line, bro, and that's what it comes out to. And it's again, you can think you're the better talent, and Shakur might actually be the better talent, right? Let's say we give him that. You're still not the box office, bro. This is and I've said it before, and I know it sounds silly, but it really is. Tank got Madonna to come watch him fight. Until you get there, shut the fuck up. Take what he's giving you. You know what I mean? And then if you think you're better than him, bet on yourself like Mayweather did with De La Hoya. Mayweather said, okay, cool. Whatever you want, bet. Because I'm going to beat you. And then when I beat you, I'm going to be you. And that's what he did. If you think you're better than Tank, beat him. Take what he's giving you, beat him, and then become him. And I think that's where we're at now, where a lot of these guys, they all think.
We're just at a point at lightweight where it's like 140, where there's a bunch of talented guys, but 140 doesn't have a star the way Tank Davis is a star. And when you get divisions like this, you get a lot of guys waiting for that one big fight. And my hope is that, and we're talking about specifically about William Zepeda, but my hope is just that these guys can all start fighting each other, and ultimately one of them can become a more attractive fight for Tank.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, outside of, I don't know, maybe Junto or the Monster, whoever wins that, it's probably a fight worthy of Tank at that point. You know what I'm saying? If they both have to move up to make it happen. But I think, at his division, really, outside of Shakur, there's really nobody. I don't really care who.
But what there is there's talent. But what there is there's talent.
There's talent. Oh yeah, there's
young guys coming for that crown, and I just hope that. And I get that if we're talking box office and whatever, Tank is the guy. But if Tank wants to have any kind of like boxing legacy where he gets to be in the same conversations as Floyd and Canelo and Manny, he's gonna have to start taking some of these kind of fights at some point. And he's pushing 30 years old, and he really hasn't taken any of them.
What do you think of KD's call out of him? Because KD is talking a lot of shit.
Sure.
KD's talking about who has he fought. Come on, let's stop it. He's got some names on his ledger, but KD's talking like, yo, he thinks Tank is trash.
I mean, I'm which he's supposed to do, right? He's trying to make interest. Yeah. And if I'm being honest, Keyshawn's 24. I think he's had a more interesting first part of his career than Tank did in terms of who he's fought. He's already been in with multiple world-class guys.
I still think he's biting off way more than he can chew. I mean, look, and that's no disrespect to Keisha. I think KD is probably going to be the division at some point, right? I think he's the next. He's next. Tank is a whole different beast, man, and he's proven it over and over and over again. You know what I'm saying? Um, I'd like to see KD in with some of the guys that we're talking about that should be fighting. Uh, you know, uh, Tank next. KD and Cepeda, like I'd watch that. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
But
And if
that,
you can get a
all
guy,
that to say, and I agree with what you're saying. But if Tank is going to say that, oh, I only take big fights, so I'm going to fight Lamont Roach, like you're full of shit. You know what I mean? Like you can't tell me that's the big fight.
I think what doesn't Lamont got a belt?
Of course he does. He's a great fighter, bro, but he's not even at
I
the
think
weight
that's
level.
why he's fighting. I think I don't know, man. To be honest with you, I can't. And I'm stretching here, but I can't make sense of the Lamont Roach thing either.
It's like
I don't
Canelo saying that David
understand it.
Benavidez isn't a big enough name, but then he fights Berlanga. You know what I mean? Or he fights John Ryder. You know,
I
like
got
at a certain point, you don't
got
want to
the
take a hard fight.
I got the Berlanga fight. I did not get the John Ryder fight. I agree with you, John Ryder. John Ryder, to me, even though he's a decent guy, come on, bro, come on.
And you can't take
Berlanga,
that fight when you're saying, who's David Benavidez? You know, if Tank is
right?
going, who's Shakur Stevenson? Who's Williams Zepeda? Well,
But
you're going
then
to
he
fight
fought
the big
But then he
superstar
fought
that is
Jaime
Lamont
Munguia.
Roach.
He fought Jaime Munguia, made him look silly. You know what I'm saying? And he did. And I get the Berlanga thing. The Berlanga thing was strictly box office. That was look, the Puerto Rican Mexico thing. And then like him or hate him, Berlanga is box office. People love this kid. So I got that one. I understood it. It was strictly business. John Ryder, yeah, come on, bro. You got a hard time trying to sell me on that shit.
And what star power? Lamont Roach is for guys like us, dude. A
Yeah.
good technical champion that doesn't have a big name, like that's our kind of guy. So if Tank is going, I only take big fights. Here's your big fight. Like then they have lost touch with what the public
Is that fight still happening?
I don't think it is. The time will tell on that. Jesus Sam says Oscar Duarte versus Akhmedov. My scorecard was a draw. I mean, dude, this is another couple of fucking killers at 140 pounds. I think a draw is a perfectly fair score. Of course, Akhmedov losing another close decision, heartbreaking. Probably the best 10-4 fighter you're ever going to find. And this was another close one. I really like Duarte. Akhmedov has that Eastern European footwork. He cuts a lot of nice angles. The only thing that he does that maybe sometimes makes the fight closer than it needs to is he spends a little bit too much time in that mid-range with the high guard, just catching shots. And sometimes he answers and sometimes he doesn't. But as skilled of a guy as he is, I do feel like when he does that, he makes the rounds closer than they need to be. And I was a little heartbroken for him, man. I kind of felt like he edged this fight out, and I like Duarte a lot. But to see Akhmedov, have to walk away with another L on his record after a performance like that, it was disappointing. But shout out to Duarte, closed the fight strong. And, he's another kind of bona fide contender to throw in the mix of a junior welterweight, which has like 15, 20 killers right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Akhmedov, like, that dude can't catch a break to save his fucking life.
Oof.
But
Brutal.
I mean, he really can't. I mean, it's you talk about hard luck fighters. If you looked up hard luck fighters in a dictionary, his name is on the list.
It's like him and Sergey Derevyanchenko are like, right?
Oh my God, bro! Let's not even talk about Derevyanchenko. That shit
they're a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, God damn it, I thought this was the one. You know what I mean? Again, like you said, hats off to Oscar Duarte. I think he earned it. But I feel you, Jesus M. Like, I want to give Akhmedov every excuse in the book. I want to give him all the the love and all that. I think he lost the fight, but it's still one of those things where I was like, God damn it, can this dude get one? Just one. I just want to see him get the one. It's the same thing with Derevchenko. I'd like to see that guy get the one, and then I'd be good. I'd be like, all right, bro, get out of here. You got it. Go. You know what I'm saying?
I want to see Akhmedov have his Abel Ramos moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where, it's like always the bridesmaid, never the bride, bro. Like, I just want to see him get the one where it's like, nah, you're the guy tonight. Because I think you put him in with anybody at 140 and he's competitive, right? I think that's obvious that he could probably give anybody in the top 20 at 140 a solid 12-round fight. And how many of those he can win or separate himself in, I don't know. But I think he's in the mix with any of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough, as a boxing guy to see those guys. You got to love and respect them every time they come out, even if you don't think they're going to win. You know what I'm saying? But they're going to come out there and damn near win it. You know what I mean? So I don't know, bro. And I'll say this. I want to say I got to respect it because there are a lot of guys like the Derevchenkos, like the Akhmedovs, who have these types of careers, like the Mickey Wards, back in the day, if we want to go back.
Glenn Johnson.
Glencoe Johnson, even Marcos Maidana before he beat Broner. You know what I'm saying? He was getting the fights, but not getting the fight, right?
Abel Ramos.
And they keep on doing it. A lot of guys would give up. They'd be like, fuck it, and you got to respect these guys for coming back in and then having these awesome fucking fights. Like, we're still talking about these guys, even in there. We're talking about the dudes who lost more than we are the guys who won. Like we spent, 5 minutes talking about Abel Ramos and maybe 2 seconds talking about Mario Barrios. You know what I'm saying? Who's the champ, by the way? So that tells you everything you need to know about who these guys are and what they bring to the sport.
The last fight that we need to talk about, I would say, I'm really excited about Oscar Collazo. He gets a knockout win over, the Thai guys. They have their sponsor in the name. The guy's name is Knockout CP Freshmart, which I still find funny. I know that that's the tradition out there. It's still funny as shit. I remember Manny fighting Hassan 3K Battery back in the day. I thought it was funny then. But I think that Oscar Collazo, he beats the longest reigning champion at minimum weight. He's clearly a talented guy. He's clearly somebody to keep your eye on. He's sharp. He's good defensively. He's a great counter puncher. He's accurate. And it also does kind of look like, he could move up to 108 or 112, and that skill set is going to carry. But what are your thoughts on Oscar Collazo? Obviously, there's not, a ton of talent at 105 at the moment, but there's a bunch of it at 108, 112, 115. Where do you see Collazo going moving forward?
I actually have a different view on that. I think there's a shitload of talent. I think there's not any household names, right? At
Great point.
If you look at it, you look at all the guys who came from those super smaller weights. We didn't hear about them until they started moving up. Look at the Monster. You know what I'm saying? We didn't hear anything about him until he moved up and started beating some of these more well-known household. Manny Pacquiao. You know what I mean? People forget what weight he started at, and then.
But even when you get down into the lower weights, like 115 had all the guys for a little bit. And then, but before that, they were all at 112. So 112 was the hot, when Chocolatito and Quadras and all those guys. When I was a kid first getting into boxing, the champ at minimum weight was Ivan Calderon. And he wasn't a huge name, but he was kind of a main event fighter. And I think that there's potential that Oscar Collazo could be that right now. And I think if he were to move up to 108 and take on, Nantashinga or some of these other, interesting, bigger fighters up there, I think he's got a skill set that, will give any of them fits.
I'll be honest with you. I think that he's probably going to be a victim of his size, right? I think really, unless he gets to be honest with you, bro, I think it would take him getting to 112 maybe even 115. Like he's going to have to move up a significant. He's going to probably have to put on 10 pounds, you know, to get big boy checks and big boy recognition. For us, you know, the nerds of the sport, we love this dude. You know, we think we're screaming at the top of our lungs. Why aren't more people watching this guy? Because the little weight.
The skills are there.
Yeah, I think it's just and even when you think about that, you say these names like Calderon again, Manny Pacquiao before he moved up. You know, no one knew who Naoya Inoue was 5 years ago, bro, 10 years ago when he was fighting at those smaller weights. And you look at who he is now, and you think that's almost impossible. Like, how did you not know who this guy was? You know what I mean? But you look at Palazzo and you go, okay, no one knows who he is because he's fighting at 105. That's it. There's no other reason you don't know who this dude is other than the fact that he's fighting at a weight class that just doesn't get a lot of attention. And I think you're right. I think it's a crime that more people don't. And I think he is fighting talent. I mean, there's a lot of talent in those divisions. And I tell people, if you want to watch a million punches around, watch them 115, 112, 108, 105. Watch them fights, bro. It's nonstop action, and I love it.
My dream fight at the moment, just because, and again, some people say, "Oh, it's only 7 pounds," but that is big, especially when you start getting down that low in weight. But I would love to see Koyazo fight Kenshiro Taraji. I think that would be a real fun fight.
You talking? Look, man. For those of you who don't know who we're talking about, get your Googles on. I'm here to tell you, you won't be disappointed. And I want to say something. I think it was either you or Jack who was telling people about Junto Nakatani, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple years back, everybody was like, "Who the fuck is that?" Now everybody's going, "Holy shit!" Everybody wants to take credit for that. ITR, run the tape. ITR is one of the first motherfuckers to really put people on because we watch all of them here at ITR. We watch all the weights, right? So when we're talking about these dudes, I'm telling you, get your Google on. These dudes are blockbuster. They should be, anyway. When you're talking about not only skill but just entertainment. I mean, these dudes are. Look, I mean, hell. I was trying to think of the name. Brian Valoria, the Hawaiian Punch. People had no clue who that cat was until he got his first big TV fight, and then everybody swore they knew he was the greatest thing, you know what I mean, since sliced bread. Guys like that, right? These are the guys we're talking about. These dudes are all over the place right now at these smaller weights. You just got to find them, guys. I'm telling you, some of the best fights you'll see too, man.
And this is a random story, but I remember several years ago, it was probably 2017 or 2018. I was on the production staff for Coachella, and on my off days, I would go to LA, and sometimes I would go to Wildcard, and I would work out with Justin Juco. And when you get to do that, you get to see some real heads in there. And one of the days that everyone's on the heavy bags, the corner of my eye, I'm hearing this sound come off this bag. I'm like, who the fuck is hitting that bag like that? And I look over, and it's Brian Valoria, and it's this kind of small, unassuming 115-pound guy. And I'm telling you, you have never heard a sound come off a heavy bag like the sound that this fucking guy was producing. It was unbelievable. Nibs, this has been a hell of a show, my friend, as is tradition on our broadcast. Tell people why it's so important to support local boxing.
Look, man, you hear me say this over and over and over again. I just want to tell you guys, look, every time we have these big fight weekends, even you look at a guy like Jake Paul, he started making YouTubes in his kitchen, living room, wherever, right? Even these guys that are big names that we might not even necessarily think are legitimate guys, they started where? Right? At home. If you're not supporting them now, you won't get to see them or be able to really love what they do later, right? Why are these guys the big names that they are now? Is because some people supported them when they were getting it out of the mud, when they were in their living rooms, when they were training in their backyards, with holes in their socks and shoes, you know what I'm saying? Doing it just for the love of what they were doing when they weren't making any money doing it. And now they're some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment. You have to support them then, because if you don't, guess what? You'll never get to see them in the spotlights. And again, I keep saying this over and over and over again. Supporting local boxing events, supporting, local fighting events, MMA, all that. You're supporting your local economy. The people that are working those events are guys like you and me. They're the guys, your neighbor. There's the guy picking up your trash every day. There are people working these events that need that, economy to flow. So supporting local events, especially local boxing, you're supporting yourself. It makes sense, guys. Let's get it together.
And I don't want to get too big picture, right? But it's a crazy world out there right now. And I think now more than ever, supporting your own community and the people around you and the people that keep the world moving. And sometimes that can include supporting your local fighters, because those are the fighters that really need it. That shit is important. Nibs, hell of a show, my friend.